Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Savannah if you are new here. Today is Thursday, April the 8th, and today we are talking about a story that broke yesterday afternoon involving the Alabama Secretary of State, John Merrill, and a, quote, inappropriate relationship, end quote, that he had with a 44-year-old. Now, this is a story that we did a lot of reporting on at AL.com yesterday afternoon. Our own Connor Sheets is here. He was one of the reporters that broke this story for us. And today we're going to talk, Connor, about what you learned yesterday and what we reported yesterday and kind of what this means for John Merrill's career. We know that, again, he is the Secretary of State. That term is coming to an end at the beginning of, I believe it's 2023. And he was not eligible to run again for that seat anyway because of term limits. So we'll talk about that as well. But if you have comments, please keep them classy. Drop them in the comments here. I will be keeping an eye on them. And if you have any questions, I will forward them on to Connor. So Connor, let's get started and talk about yesterday. I know you spoke with Secretary of State yesterday. That's Wednesday. Tell me what that first conversation was and how that conversation kind of changed throughout the day.
So actually, Kyle spoke with the Secretary of State yesterday exclusively, and I more interacted with Cesare McPherson. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her first name, but so I handled the conversation with her, and Kyle Whitmire, my colleague, columnist here, handled the conversations with Merrill. And so I guess the initial conversation, what happened was on, I guess, Tuesday now, National filed a website that somewhat minor website, but a right-wing website that posts a lot of, things critical of certain right-wing leaders, but also, Democrats and media. They put out an article citing some text messages and an audio recording that seemed to suggest that this woman, Cesare McPherson, is an Alabama woman who's in Montgomery for years, that she had an affair with John Merrill that had lasted a number of years. That recording is pretty explicit, and that was a call between her and a reporter. That came out. She's now said that was recorded against her wishes, but that came out, and after that, I started talking to her. I was interacting with her, talking to her, finding out what the real story was. And she said, and she sort of basically, in that conversation, she was saying that this affair had been going on for years, all that. So the next day comes around, and Kyle ends up talking to John Merrill in the morning, and the Secretary of State said, this is essentially denied the affair, said that she was stalking him and harassing him, and that he had not, essentially saying he did not have an affair with her. And, from what I had heard from my source, from Ms. McPherson, clearly there's two conflicting sides of the story. So I asked her, do you have any proof of this beyond these text messages, which, a text message could be easily doctored. It really just says John Merrill. There's no real way to prove it. So I guess we could have tracked his number or whatever, but she said, actually, I have these recordings of conversations between me and him, and she sent me one of them, and it's a pretty sexually explicit conversation between the Secretary of State and her about their encounters over the years, and about how he's trying to break it off with her, and she's trying to keep it together with him, and it was a pretty good confirmation that this had happened. And so do you mind if I just continue?
Go ahead.
Continue with it. So from there, I gave I had Kyle ran this audio file by the Secretary of State, and he said, we'll get back to you shortly. Got us a statement, basically had a conversation with Kyle where he said, clearly I had an inappropriate relationship, and I will not be running for Senate in 2022. And then we clarified that over time, and it appears that he's not planning on running for office again, at least in 2022 at all. So that's kind of the gist.
So you dumped a lot on us here, Connor. Let's break it down. So after initially denying the reports of affair yesterday morning, Alabama Secretary of State John Merrill did come back later on Wednesday, yesterday, telling AL.com he had a, quote, inappropriate relationship with 44-year-old Miss McPherson. Now, he has said that he is not going to run for Senate. We know that. We also know, again, his term as Secretary of State was ending anyway in January of 2022. 2023, excuse me, and he would not be able to seek that office again just because of term limits. But it does appear from Secretary Merrill that he will not seek any sort of office next year, 2022, Senate or any other kind. So we have that. Now, we do know that initially John Merrill said that Ms. McPherson was, I believe he said, quote, stalking and harassing him. That was before he came back and admitted to that affair. We do have a small portion of that audio recording in the story on AL.com. We've linked it here in the comments. We have that small portion again. And as I believe Connor mentioned, Ms. McPherson says that relationship took place between November 2017 and November 2020. So just looking at my notes to make sure I get those days correct, Connor. But there's a couple of things that you quote in your story, Connor, that are said in this audio file that you were provided. And some of those are about explicit sex acts that the two engaged in on multiple occasions throughout their romantic relationship. And there were some other comments from John Merrill about trying to stay away from Ms. McPherson, trying to break off that relationship. You quote in your story that John Merrill says, quote, I'm not able to stay away from you. So that's the reason why I have help in order to do that. And then he says that help is coming from the Lord. And that was mentioned several times by Secretary Merrill in this recording. Now,
yeah.
I know that, go ahead.
No, correct. Yeah.
There's also a mention in your story about a past incident involving the secretary and another scandal after a woman alleged another sexual encounter there. Can you go into any more detail about that?
So I did not report on that at the time, but we did at AL.com. Some of my colleagues looked at that. But basically, a woman came forward saying that she had engaged in oral sex with John Merrill. I think consensual is what she was saying, but that it was an extramarital affair. And then he essentially countered that by saying that it was actually, that she had initiated it and he stopped it before it got to the point of anything beyond like minor kissing or whatever. And so that was essentially a denial by him. And I don't think it really hurt his career too much at that point. But it does suggest that there's been that this is not the first time that he's had some kind of, allegations of impropriety.
Now I'm looking through some of the comments here, and we have one person talking about resignation. We know that has been something that's been floating around for a couple hours now. It seems like a long time. This really just broke yesterday, but there's an interesting comment that John Merrill provided late Wednesday, and I'm going to look down and read this quote. He says, quote, I hope someone can use me as an example of how they have the opportunity to accomplish things. Because of poor choices and poor decisions in things, it can result in a negative impact for a lot of people that you did not intend to impact. That's because I exercised poor choices and poor discipline. Maybe some good can come out of this for somebody else. So we do know that the secretary has reflected on what this scandal has cost him politically and in his life. He makes, I think, a comment as well to AL.com about being embarrassed and disappointed in himself and embarrassed for himself and his family. Now, I know you have had more of your conversations with Ms. McPherson, and our colleague Kyle Whitmire has had more conversations with the secretary, but do you know anything else about what the secretary is thinking this morning regarding his position? I know he is in office through January of 2023.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of rumors flying around Montgomery right now that I'm not particularly party to, but I mean, we're hearing calls from Democrats. Well, I mean, there's also this whole other side issue that's sort of come up out of this, which is this allegation that he referred to some, I'm not exactly sure, but Black individuals as coloreds. I mean, it's a term I guess he apparently being accused of having used. He's denied it, I think. But, the Alabama Democrats have said if he did use that terminology or other racist terminology, which in the original article on National File, Ms. McPherson alleged he had made racist comments in conversations with her. Alabama Democrats have said they would expect him to step down in that situation. But, Governor Kay Ivey, she's also a Republican, and the head of the Alabama Republican Party also, they both came forward and said, basically condemned what he did, but they didn't call for him to step down. So you're getting isolated calls. There's Matt Murphy, who's a right-wing talk radio host. He's calling for him to step down. There's been a number of people, but we're not seeing a widespread movement yet. And it's unclear what's going on inside Merrill's camp. We've heard rumors that, are not worth repeating because we have no way of verifying them about what he's thinking. But, I think that's going to be a part of the conversation, though.
I will say, and I think one of my producers can probably drop a link here to a story that we had last night from our other colleague, Mike Kaysen. This has been a really big team effort here at AL.com. And that was something that Mike reported yesterday, was that John Merrill has denied using racist language. And that is something that Ms. McPherson made a comment of in that audio clip. And he said, quote, "I have never referred to African Americans and Black folks as coloreds." He said, "I do not do that. I've never done that," end quote.
Yeah.
And again, that was a quote from John Merrill about that situation that Connor was mentioning. We can drop that story in the comments here as well. Several different things coming out of that audio clip this morning. Now let's pivot to talk about the Senate for just a second, Connor. Now, we know that Mo Brooks, a congressman from North Alabama, he has already announced that he's planning to run for Senate. John Merrill had not officially announced a Senate run before yesterday when he said he wasn't going to run. Is that correct?
Yes, but his website, johnmerrill.com, which has now been taken down. But as of yesterday afternoon, when I checked and, did some screenshots and all that, there was Merrill for Senate, Merrill U.S. Senate, various terminology like that on sort of insignias on the site. So I do think that it's pretty clear that he was gearing up to run. It appears, looking at campaign finance records at the federal level, there is a John H. Merrill for U.S. Senate group. It's unclear. It looks like it's a little bit of an older group, but of a campaign committee. But also one of his campaign, the person who would have been his campaign manager has apparently listed Merrill for Senate as his job, I think on LinkedIn or something. So, the groundwork was there. He was definitely gearing up for a Senate race, as far as anyone that follows politics in Alabama could tell. And I think that's what the biggest thing that's come out of this so far is him saying, you're taking out one of the leading contenders. I think between him and Mo Brooks, they were probably two of the main people. So it's a big development in that sense going forward.
And this is an interesting quote from John Merrill about that announcement of he's not running for Senate. He said, as part of the comment saying he's not going to be a candidate for Senate or for any other office next year, he said, quote, "Because I think it's important to me to make sure that I become the man that I have been before, and that I am working to put myself in the position to be the leader that I have been before, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, and as an elected official," end quote. That was what he said about that Senate run that hadn't been announced, but was widely speculated until yesterday when he made that announcement that he was not going to run. Now, Connor, is there any other big piece of this we're missing? I know this is a developing story that we at AL.com are working to put together. Is there anything else that we've published so far that we haven't glossed over?
I think that there's two things. So first of all, I'm seeing some comments where people are saying, did he break the law and that type of thing? And I think it's important to remember, he did not, as far as we know, break the law. There were some preliminary allegations in that first National File story that maybe he used his state vehicle or state cell phone in furtherance of this affair. Who knows if that's true? It's something that we're going to be looking into. But beyond that, I think he probably did not break the law. But the question is, he clearly stated falsely in the morning yesterday to Kyle, and also Tuesday night to another reporter, and I think on the radio yesterday to Matt Murphy, that he had not engaged, essentially denying the affair and saying that, saying that this woman had been, that Miss McPherson had been harassing him and all that. And then now, very quickly afterwards, once he's confronted with this audio, he now changes the tune. And I think the question of can he be trusted is one that people are asking a lot now. And the other thing is, just he has a history of sort of, some of these statements about what's wrong with society and that type of thing. So he said, in, I think, 2019, he got some minor national and regional headlines for basically blaming the moral decay of society in America on, quote unquote, I think he said homosexuals, and that's the quote, and then wife swap TV shows. So
Yeah, so I've actually got your quote right here where he said in a town hall in 2019 that, quote, homosexual activities and, quote, wife swap shows
yes.
are driving a moral decline in America. So that was something that John Merrill made headlines for in 2019. And throughout his entire tenure of Secretary of State, you report in your story, yours and Kyle's story, I should say, that he has reportedly been drawn to topics like voting rights advocates and Democrats for policies, as he has been criticized widely. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I think the point about about him blaming the moral decline or whatever is comparing that to now we see that he was engaged in some activities that people might find immoral, and I think he's basically said as such. I think some people have questions about the discrepancy there.
Now, there was one other quote that I wanted to make note here, and that was something again that John Merrill said yesterday. And he said that quote, there's no excuse for his extramarital relationship. And he said, quote, it's clear that I had an inappropriate relationship with her, meaning Miss McPherson, and it is not something that I am proud of or something that is, and then he kind of, I think, trailed off and said, I'm very disappointed in myself. I'm also disappointed that I allowed my family to be embarrassed by this action. It's something I will certainly always regret because of the pain that it has caused my family. So, Connor, again, I know this is something we're going to be keeping up with on AL.com, and we appreciate your reporting on this, and we know that this story is far from over.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And Keith, stay tuned. I think we'll have some more reporting coming out in the coming days.
Connor, thank you so much. Everybody watching, thank you. We'll